When they revealed a new Monster Hunter game called Outlanders back in 2024, my initial excitement quickly turned into bewilderment the longer I watched the first ever trailer for this thing. Between the incredibly laggy footage being displayed on what seemed to be a phone screen, I saw some impressive visuals paired with some of the most awkward animations and traversal of a bizarre-looking world, which was seemingly meant to be engaged with in a Breath of the Wild-esque way. I had absolutely no idea what to think of this game, and eventually forgot about its existence, especially once Wilds dropped in early 2025. But that changed as we got a new trailer later that year, and things started to become a little more clear on what this thing actually might be. Which finally brings us to today. I was able to get access to the closed beta test of Monster Hunter Outlanders, and after having spent a little bit of time with it, and I truly mean little, I have a lot of thoughts about it. Some are positive, but most of them are negative. Now, before we get started on what it's like playing this game, I have to give you some context that will help you understand where my opinions come from. First and foremost, I hate gaming on a phone. Touchscreen controls have always bothered me, and I know that some phones are specifically built for gaming. You can use a controller or whatever, but I played this on my ancient iPhone 13, and I hated it. Sure, you could emulate it on PC when it launches, but this game is specifically built as a mobile-only experience, so it should be treated as such. Secondly, I enjoy gacha games. I've played my fair share of open-world gacha games like Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, and a few others. I am well aware of how they work mechanically, and more importantly, how their monetization works. Despite all the issues this genre has, I have had a great time with the games I've mentioned, and I believe that there is a correct way of engaging with them to actually have fun. Why am I mentioning gacha games in a video about Monster Hunter? You already know. And last but definitely not least, I love Monster Hunter. So I wanted to give this game an honest shot to see if it's worth checking out for fans of the series, or maybe even those who want to get into it. So, what is Outlanders? It's a really weird game. It's got the Monster Hunter name in its title and contains the same creatures you would fight in any other game of the franchise, or rather specifically Monster Hunter World for some reason. But other than these surface-level similarities, Outlanders feels completely different in almost every other aspect. Fundamentally, the bones that make up the underlying design and system here are taken straight up from open-world gacha games like Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, etc. It's a character-based action game with special abilities, ultimates, and team synergies based off of their role and element. You do get to create your own player character with a somewhat decent creation tool at the very start, but shortly after completing the tutorial sections, you will gain access to the hero recruitment, which is a core aspect of the game's progression and monetization. The open world is littered with random lootable chests that reward you with leveling items and currencies, all of which feed into a confusing mess of dozens of resources you need to grind in order to acquire and build your characters. And there's so much more that Outlanders borrows from gacha games of the past, but I don't really care to point them all out individually. Matter of fact is, this game is a gacha game at its core, just with a Monster Hunter skin on top of it. But like I established earlier, I technically don't really mind since I enjoy both of these things. So why is it that I barely had the desire to play it after only around 2 to 3 hours of playtime? The fact that it was on my phone was a huge contributing factor, yes, but even more so than that, this game's design philosophy is constantly at war with that of traditional Monster Hunter games. Progression has always been a very straightforward topic in the series. You go and kill monsters, grab materials from them to make new and better gear to go and fight even stronger monsters. The stats of the gear itself is what makes your player characters stronger, as well as the knowledge you gain on attack patterns and weaknesses of the creatures, or even things like environmental traps that you can use to your advantage. Some of this also applies in Outlanders. You can still go and forge your own gear after collecting enough materials from a hunt, but there's so much more than that, and not in a good way. You also have to level up the characters you acquire from the gacha system, which increases their base stats. You have to level up their special abilities and unlock a whole bunch of bullshit by getting duplicates of the same characters, directly selling you power to get stronger, as most gacha games do. You can Of course, also pull companions in the form of palicos, with their own set of stats to level up and their own abilities to develop. I'm only scratching the surface of the completely unnecessary complexity here, but this is just the gacha way of doing things. And don't worry, of course, everything that I've mentioned also requires you to grind out different form of currencies or upgrade materials separately to keep up with everything. Because in order to go on certain hunts and be effective, you need to get that character score up or you'll be too weak. Not that the game is difficult, but the developers have to somehow introduce artificial difficulty and time gates to hold players back from progressing too much. Unless, of course, you open your wallet and just pay up. Say it together with me, everyone. Because that is the gacha way. But let's quickly put aside the discussion around progression and let's focus on the actual experience of playing the game. What is Outlanders like outside of its menus? Well, joke's on you. The first couple of hours are so incredibly hand-holdy, trying to explain the game's thousands of systems, that you don't really get a feel for it. When you first boot up the game and create your character, you will be prompted to choose between two different fighting modes, simple and adventure. The first one basically makes it so you only have to mash a single button, and the game does the rest for you, while the adventure mode at least tries to give you a comparable combat experience to the rest of the series. I obviously chose the latter because I would like to play the game of Monster Hunter. For the entirety of my time with Outlanders, I was playing with the weapon they give you at the very start, which is somehow the most liked and disliked weapon at once, the longsword. I stuck with it because my actual favorites, the Charge Blade and Hunting Horn, are completely absent here. After the tutorial, you get to choose between 6 different weapon types. Any Monster Hunter fan will likely notice that this isn't even close to the actual number of available weapon categories they could use, but this could just be a symptom of the live service nature of this game. Over time, they can add them in as new content to keep you coming back and hopefully spend some extra cash because, there will be some sick new character to go with it as well. All of this is speculation, of course. It's possible that some weapons didn't make it into the closed beta, but knowing how a gacha game's live service works, it would be the most logical explanation. But once you are geared up and ready to head out for a hunt, you can first go and interact with the only really positive thing that I have to say about the game. The food you can eat to boost your stats looks way better than what you can get in Wilds. The animation and the food itself, unfortunately, has way more charm than Wilds, and it's honestly fairly depressing meal plan. I really couldn't believe it. But after that, it is time to go out into the world and go do your thing as a hunter. In the open world, you also get to interact with the aforementioned lootable chests or small events that reward you with all kinds of currencies. But while it might seem like there is a lot to do, the world somehow still feels barren, even with all those chests scattered about. You can observe some wildlife, but it all just doesn't feel right. Because of all the gacha systems present, you are always taken out of the experience of exploring a living ecosystem like in Monster Hunter World or Wilds. This clash of game design philosophy from the franchise and this game's direction and monetization really destroyed any sort of positive feelings I may have had towards the world itself. And then once you engage in a fight, it's just more of that. I mean, please look at this clip and tell me that I'm not wrong for thinking that this just doesn't feel like Monster Hunter, or at least that there's a really weird disconnect between Outlanders and what made most of us love this franchise.
Found your weak spot.
I know that there are people out there that will like this game. I'm not trying to tell you that you shouldn't enjoy this or that this is an irredeemable piece of software that shouldn't have been created. Just to quickly reiterate, I am the target audience for this game. I enjoy or love individual aspects that make up this experience in a vacuum, but when combined, I found myself to not be able to enjoy either. I didn't play much of Outlanders. It might get a lot better later on, that is entirely possible. But if you remember back to the start of this video, I said that I believe that there is a right and wrong way to play gacha games like this. In my opinion, the right way is to not involve yourself too much, disconnect from the FOMO, play at your own pace and only the content you actually like. Take a break if you have to. Don't try to min-max everything, and for the love of God, stay away from the community because that is usually a place you don't want to go to anyway. even when applying all of these things, even if you are able to have a healthy playstyle and not fall for the scummy monetization, even if you are a super fan of Monster Hunter and gacha games, I still think that you are better off just playing a different game entirely. Once I'll be able to emulate this game on PC, I might give it another shot to see if it gets any better when you get deeper into it. But until then, I don't plan on touching it any further. Which is a shame, but it completely failed at convincing me that it's worth spending any more time on this thing. I hope that I was able to properly convey my thoughts and feelings on Outlanders without sounding too bitter or needlessly antagonistic in this video. But what about you guys? Have you been able to get into the beta test and have your own thoughts about it? If so, I would love to hear them down in the comments. That was it for me. If you'll excuse me, I gotta go and expand my factory in Arknight's Enfield.